Rusty,
Hey, Niall McCann, how you doing?
good. How are you?
Doing good.
Nice to
How's
see
your
you.
how's your
Cheers.
afternoon been so far?
Well, my daughter has just been sent home from nursery for yet another COVID test.
Oh no.
This will be her 10th test, and I think the 8th time she's been sent home as a result of it. She's had to have two a couple of times. So yeah, poor little thing. She doesn't yet know because she's only two.
Oh,
So
okay, it's only two? Oh my gosh.
she'll find out when someone's looming over her trying to prod something up her nose again.
Exactly. It doesn't sound new to her though.
No, she's a proper expert these days. Poor little thing.
Sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is amazing what's going on here.
Yeah, you East Coast or where are you?
Yeah, I'm in New York.
You guys have taken the brunt of a
Yeah,
lot of.
we're getting hit. And even right now, it's I'd say for almost past 8 months or so, I've been really staying home. Me and my wife doing the bare minimum, going out to get some food and stuff, and coming right back. The problem
Yeah.
is my wife's from the Amazon rainforest, so I
Yeah.
I barely speak English anymore. So like right now is the first time I've spoken English probably in the last 3 weeks.
Portuguese, Spanish, or
Spanish.
and Spanish.
It's weird because she lives on the border of Brazil and Peru. So you have Spanish, but there's a dialect of Portuguese in there.
Portuñol.
Yes, exactly. Aside from studying endangered species extensively, when you were 18, you cycled through the Himalayas, right? And
Yeah.
then when you were 26, you rode across the Atlantic. Now,
Yeah.
I want to specify road, not meaning sitting in a boat rowed. I mean with oars rowed from the Canary Islands to Antigua, right? And then to top it off,
Yeah,
after
that's
that,
correct.
you skied across Greenland.
That's also true.
That's Da Vinci badass, man. It's amazing what you've done.
Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, those activities and adventures have formed a very interesting backdrop to my career as a biologist, which I've been kind of pursuing in parallel. I've had these
Mhm.
multiple kind of career strands that I've tried to interweave as much as possible. I think one thing that people forget is that you can have unbelievable adventures in a rainforest or
Yeah.
in a wetland somewhere. When people
Mhm.
think about exploration and adventure, they're thinking mountains, they're thinking ice caps, and they're thinking oceans. But for
Yeah.
me, I've had just as many unbelievable adventurous experiences staring down wildlife in remote places, remote jungles and stuff. And yeah, I've loved that ability to intertwine these multiple strands of my career.
I totally relate because it's early in my career, I started working with wildlife, worked with all different types, of specialized in birds of prey and reptiles. Then I went to Africa. And at first I went to Africa to just study wildlife, but then I got really into seeing the culture and going into the shanty villages and seeing them. And that brought an entire new facet to what I was doing. Then when I got into the Amazon, that just totally changed my life. Once my boots hit the ground, that was it. So I've been going there about every 6 months for, gosh, the past 15 years or so. To me, that's the adventure because not only are you seeing the wildlife, but man, what a harsh climate it is.
Tough for people to survive in those kinds of environments. I remember speaking to a friend of mine that's done an amazing amount of work in the Amazon, mainly in Brazil, but all over Amazonia. And he
Mhm.
was talking to someone up in the Xingu River area. And
Mhm.
this is an Amerindian guy who's lived in Xingu his entire life. And my friend Todd, he's a Canuck, born in Canada, so grown up surrounded by ice. A lot of time up in the Arctic. Now here he is in the Amazon, getting smashed by mosquitoes, hammered by
Oh yeah.
mosquitoes. And he turned to this Xingu shaman and said, "How do you get used to the mosquitoes?" And the guy just turned back and said, "Never get used to them."
No,
So
you don't.
they're living in a harsh environment.
You don't. And so many times I would offer them repellent, and I've never had one native accept it. And sometimes we'd be talking at night, and while they're talking, it's just common. It's almost like a dance. They're just talking and slapping and doing, And so I said, "Here, you want some repellent?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no." And to me, it's like, why? But then if you think about it, it's like, okay, well, I'm either dealing with just these animals that are in my natural environment, or I'm going to wipe poison all over my body. They much rather just slap at them. I take a cardboard box and fill it up with baby chickens,
Hmm.
and I'd sit it under my table at night and I'd stick my feet in a box, and they would jump and eat all the mosquitoes off of my legs. At least from the knees down, I knew I wasn't going to get any mosquitoes, and they just get their bellies full and end up sleeping on my feet. You find any way you can.
That's a very novel idea. So I travel with my wife, who is very tasty to mosquitoes. So if I'm with her, they all flock to her instead.
Yeah, my wife's from the Amazon, so she's old school. They come right for the fresh meat here, the New York meat. So they hit me hard. You finished college pretty young, about 18 years old?
No, so it's just because in the UK we call college something different. So
okay.
College is the last 2 years of high school. So what we call college, I finished at 18, and then went away for a year and started volunteering as a biologist. And first time I went to Southern Africa and kind of experienced that megafauna, which was quite something.
Right.
And then came back to university and did a 3-year degree in zoology.
Your first real expedition was with your father, right? Cycling over the Himalayas. I mean, what's that got to be like? Obviously, a lot of uphill.
Yes, a very lot of uphill, followed by a lot of downhill on the other side.
I bet that was refreshing. Yeah?
Unbelievable. Yeah. So the very last day of cycling, I was really unwell. My stomach was terrible. I'd eaten something awful, and I was very unwell. And we had 50 miles to go, so a long old distance to cycle. And we covered it in only a few hours because the entire thing was downhill.
Right.
I was basically asleep, holding onto my handlebars, just pummeling downhill, which was brilliant. The whole thing was a wonderful experience. At that age, most people's experience of life is pretty parochial, just kind of near to home, or cultures that are relatively like yours.
Right.
So to go from that and then spend a month in Kyrgyzstan, China, and northern Pakistan, and seeing these parts of the world, interacting with local people, because when you're cycling, you're able to interact with people the entire time. You're out in the open, and you move slowly enough. A lot of interactions. We were either camping or just thumbing someone down at the end of the day and asking if we could sleep in their yurt or whatever they had.
That's great. That's the way to travel.
It was wonderful. Some incredible experiences. A night of music. The guy lived in it was an old railway carriage, and right near the border between Kyrgyzstan and China. And him, his wife, their 3 children, and her brother and sister all lived in this tiny railway carriage. And they took us in for the night and fed us, and we had a night of music and singing and dancing. And then you all sleep spooning each other to stay warm because it's minus 10 outside. It's just incredible experiences.
I got so intrigued with you, rowing across the Atlantic. It just seems such an impossible feat. But aside from that, my question is, did it play on your mind at all? Well, I'm sure when you first get there, you get going, you get gung-ho, and then after a while, you're like, oh shit, I'm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and there's no land to be found. Now, it was 66 days total?
63.
How long was that where you just never saw land? And did that play on your mind?
Yeah, so 63 days of rowing, and we didn't see land for 62 of those.
Wow. You didn't bring a soccer ball you could put a handprint on and talk to?
Well, I had my buddy. It was me and one other guy. And he was about as communicative as a soccer ball with a handprint on for a lot of it. But he suffered emotionally really badly. To begin with, in particular, just saying goodbye to land for the last time and not knowing when you're going to see it again. He really struggled with that. And then your body's just so tired, because the shifts we were doing was I would row for 1 hour while James rested, and then he would row for an hour while I rested, and we kept that going 24 hours a day for the entire time. And so the most sleep you're getting at any one point is 48 minutes of sleep. So you're very tired. Physically, it's tough because the boat weighs a metric ton. So just shifting a ton's worth of boat through the water, demanding physically. It takes its toll on you. But then there are moments of utter serenity. Right? So at night, when it's just you and the stars, and you see a meteor come into the atmosphere and separate into constituent parts, and you're hearing the meteor crackling as it comes through the atmosphere.
Wow.
That type of thing is pretty special.
Sure.
Seeing dolphins illuminated by phosphorescence, that's pretty special. There's lots of really wonderful moments in an otherwise kind of torturous couple of months.
Right. Did you run into any storms?
Yeah. When you're out there for that long, it's almost inevitable that you're going to get smashed at some point, and we got properly hammered. It's really quite disconcerting when you've got waves that are so big that they're breaking over the top of you. And you're trying to keep the stern of your boat onto the wave so you can surf it as opposed to turning sideways on and rolling. And yeah, really, really worrying. We rolled once over. James was rowing at the time. I was in the cabin, and that's very, very worrying. Like so we tipped to over 90 degrees and then came back round. Whole deck was just full of water. James covered in water, obviously smashed and all. And that night, that was the worst night we had. We got hammered, just pummeled by waves that night. Really, really quite worrying. 1,500 miles from land in a storm.
Now, what's the first thing you did when you got to Antigua? Go to Shirley Heights?
Photographic evidence would suggest the first thing we did was to crack open a beer and take
I was going to say, Shirley Heights is the best place for that. Right at the yacht club there.
We ended up at Shirley Heights. So we were staying in English Harbour. It's a beautiful little place in English Harbour. It was amazing when you come into the harbour walls, which is only like 400 meters wide or whatever it is. And that's the target you're aiming for. You've been going for 3,000 miles and you're aiming for a target that's 400 meters wide to get into the harbour, which is crazy. We rowed in, and I could see my brother was running along the harbour walls, and all the boats in the harbour were banging their klaxons and horns and stuff. It's pretty amazing. And you immediately get handed a bottle of champagne and a couple of beers, and start with that. And God, did we eat well? We ate very well for the next.
I can imagine just the feeling of accomplishment for that.
It's a strange feeling. I've never felt anything like it. Just your whole body fizzing with emotion and adrenaline. It's the first time in 2 months that we'd known for sure that we were going to be safe. And so suddenly that's a massive release. And then, in terms of accomplishment, that was 18 months of planning and preparation and fundraising and then getting fit and then doing it all. So for all of that to come to a head, essentially in one concentrated moment, it's quite a feeling.
What was the training regimen leading up to that, just to make sure you were physically ready for it?
We trained like maniacs. So we trained hard. 5 days a week in the gym. 2 of those days, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'd be in morning and evening. And so that was a whole combination of circuit training with weights and rowing on an indoor rowing machine. And then on the weekends, we would row in our boats, on average, probably 3 weekends out of 5. So most weekends, but not quite all. And that would be 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, 8 hours a day, rowing like that. So we train like maniacs. And the training reached its zenith a couple of months before we actually left, when we broke the world record for rowing in 1 million meters on an indoor rowing machine. So between us, we would alternate, him for a half an hour, me for half an hour during the daytime, and then at night it would be an hour each. And that was 67 hours, 24 minutes and 14 seconds. Which is the new world record that we set.
That Greenland, that's, I'd say, more harsh between the weather and skiing, and I mean that's physically daunting. And how long did that take? 24 days, or fractionally under 23 days and 18 hours. That's a daunting environment. The polar environment is unforgiving, and again, there was that feeling of it's not land you're seeing for the last time; it's water you're seeing for the last time. Right? Yeah.
Kiss goodbye to the coast, and then 24 days later, we hit the coast again on the other side, hauling all our gear with us. So to begin with, our sleds weighed 84 kilograms each. So it was me and a friend, just 2 of us. So carrying 84 kilos to begin with, or dragging that behind you. And Greenland starts steeply, and then it flattens off, and then steep at the other side again. So the first few days, you really feel like you're pulling uphill. And then it gets flat, but because you're high up, it gets seriously cold. So we know in Celsius, it got below minus 25 inside our tent at night for multiple hours at a time. So goodness knows how cold it was actually outside. In Fahrenheit, what's that? That's kind of minus 15, minus 20. So chilly. You notice that kind of cold. You grow frost in your beard.
What type of wildlife did you encounter?
Greenland, very little. Very little. So on the coasts, we were seeing polar bear footprints, and you see Arctic foxes and those types of things. In the center, we came across a couple of birds that have been blown off course. So wheatear, little migratory birds that come from North America into Europe every year. They've been blown off course. And then when you get to the west coast, there are things like muskox again. but they're right on the coast. On the ice cap, nothing can really survive there. Polar bears will walk into the ice cap a little bit, but we were fortunate not to encounter any in there. Like, polar bears are a wonderful thing to see, but you need to see them under the right circumstances.
Yeah, not with 85 kilos on your ass either.
30 of which was food, which they would be very attracted to.
Oh man! Now your entire family really is a biologist, correct? Your parents, your brother Rory and Finn, all biologists.
Yeah.
Do you ever think of going in a different direction at any time of your life, or your whole life you were going to be a biologist as well?
Never seriously thought of doing anything else. I had periods where I haven't been a purist, so I worked in industry a couple of times, had times where, but whenever people would say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" I say, "Oh, well, I'm a biologist. I'm just doing this just for the time being, and then I'll get back into being a proper biologist again." It was from a very young age. I knew that was going to be me. There wasn't really anything else I ever wanted to be. It was then just finding a niche within biology, because biology gives you lots of opportunities, from being a tour guide through to an academic professor and many things in between. And I think like most people's careers, what might look like a path is actually a very wibbly line.
Oh yeah.
Turning back with lots of time, and like some branches that failed and others that didn't work out for whatever reason, and some you followed, and then so it's been much more of a career wibble than a career path.
And you started some really serious type of research at a rather young age. Did 2.5 years research in giant otters?
Well, I did research on giant otters, but not for that length of time. I suppose cumulatively over time it was. But it was when I was summer of my second year as an undergraduate. So at university, we went out to South America, spent 7 weeks studying giant otters. On the back of that, one of my friends who came with me got a PhD on them. So then he spent the next 4 years studying them, and I went out again. And we kept that going, for multiple years, which was fantastic. Wonderful animal, incredible species, hugely charismatic.
I see them in the Amazon, and actually I saw a beautiful family of them. And unfortunately, all I had was my cell phone, but it was still good enough. I got it. They were there, but I wish I had my better cameras with me. But it's definitely a type of animal that they're not boring to watch. At least they're always on the go.
And were they vocalizing with you as well?
They weren't. They were more trying to get away from me, I think. I pulled up in a canoe and they had their babies and everything. So they kind of left the water and went into the jungle, but they are very vocal,
We've had it a few times in different places, Bolivia and Guyana, where I've worked with them, where they're vocalizing at you because they're trying to aggressively push you off their territory. You're this new thing. They don't really know what you are. And we've been in places where they won't have encountered human beings before. So you're this very large, half-naked monkey, which is, for some reason, it's floating on the water in a canoe, and they want to get you off their land. So they vocalize loudly, and they charge at you, the bow weight coming off their chest as they're charging through the water. Amazing to witness.
That's great. And you also did work with tapirs, correct?
My PhD on the Central American tapir. The picture behind me is of a Central American tapir. So I spent 5 years in total doing a PhD. About a year of that was actually spent in the jungles, cloud forest mainly, in Honduras, studying the conservation of Baddest tapir in Honduras. Another incredible animal. I've actually never seen a live Baddest tapir, despite doing a PhD on them. I've seen tapirs in the Amazon, but that's a different species. But I've never seen the species that I've got a PhD on.
Black-backed jackals as well. Is that in Namibia?
Yeah, in Namibia. So straight after graduating from university, spent 3 months working on a black-backed jackal research project in an incredible place where the desert comes to the sea, the Skeleton Coast of Namibia. It's a wonderful country. Scenically, it's about as beautiful as anywhere gets in Africa. It's spectacular. And it's got some very interesting biodiversity. I'm now potentially going to work my way back into working in Namibia in the future if I'm lucky. I would hope to. It's such a spectacular place.
Jackals, they're little pissers, man. I love watching them. But I was in Kalahari Gensbach National Park, and I put my sandals outside my tent when I went to sleep, and woke up, and one was gone, and all I saw were tracks of a black-backed jackal and the little line of him dragging my sandal out into the desert. never to be found again. Yeah. So then actually I had to walk around 3 days with one sandal until I traded some stuff with a local who made a pair of shoes out of tire tread, and like flip-flops out of old blown out tire tread.
You're quite lucky that's all it did. The other thing they like to do, if they find something new in their environment, is that they'll go to the toilet on top of it. So you're actually quite lucky that they ran away, as opposed to doing a poo on top of your sandal.
Yeah, no, I made out good there. I made out good. Yeah. So being a biologist, I mean, that really became a springboard for you to do many things, like you said. What else do you have planned in the future?
Yeah, so I've left what you would call frontline research and set up a conservation organization called National Park Rescue. And our remit is to try and identify national parks in Africa that cannot cope with the poaching crisis and try and help resuscitate them. So we've worked in Malawi. We're currently working in Zimbabwe. We've been working in this amazing national park called Chisarira National Park up near Lake Kariba, which has suffered terrible amounts of poaching over the last few decades. And in the 3 years that we've been there, we've completely turned it around. Elephant poaching is down by 90%. We've engaged the communities in what we're doing. We're the largest local employer. Lions are breeding again and doing really well. Lion population is on the up. So that's my big focus, is National Park Rescue, consolidating what we're doing in Zimbabwe and then expanding to other areas to take our successful model for conservation and expand it to other protected areas.